Hello, everybody. This is Heber Barbero, and I want to talk about fatigue, specifically advanced fatigue interaction models. So this will be, we've seen in videos 7 and 8 um, that we use Modify Goodman, which was the linear interaction. This is video 9, so we're going to see other models that could be better in sometimes. All right. So okay. So then a little review to refresh fluctuating stress. And so okay. So we talked about this before. If we have fluctuating, means that we have a mean value of stress apply forever, permanent. That's the mean value. And so this is like a quasi-static load. It's applied, done. But on top of that, we have a cyclic component that goes like that with a sinusoid with amplitude sigma a. So we have sigma a amplitude and sigma mean. This sigma amplitude and sigma mean are calculated as a function of this stress that is going up and down. And this stress that is going up and down is calculated with the mechanics of material formulas like P over A or MC over I, stuff like that. All right. And of course, at the point on the structure that is the critical point where those stresses are larger. And so now if we have only one type of stress, meaning that this sigma is only axial or is only bending or is only shear due to torsion. So if we have one single, then all we have to do is to increase that value by, or both values, by the same fatigue stress concentration factor, which is calculated from the theoretical stress concentration factor and the notch sensitivity. Okay, you know that. And so that means we end up with this number that is prime and this number that is prime. So I got another plot like this, but in terms of prime. Now, if there are more than one type of stress, say axial and bending or axial and shear or all three acting together, then we use von Mises. All right. So in von Mises, we go here and we say, okay, give me the bending component. So the bending component will be this. All right. We have like that. So give me the bending component. I'm going to magnify by fatigue stress concentration factor for bending. And this bending means that the theoretical KT that is hiding behind this, I took it from a chart that had a little picture that shows bending. All right. And then I said, give me the mean value for axial component, if there is. And I'm going to multiply by another fatigue stress concentration factor for axial with KT I took from another chart. And then if there is torsion, give me the mean value of torsion. I'm going to multiply by yet another stress concentration factor, fatigue stress concentration factor for shear, meaning shear means I took it from another chart. KT I took from another chart for that case, for torsion, all right? And I put all that in this formula, which is von Mises equation and square root and everything. I get my sigma m prime. And if I use this equation, I use the sigma a prime. And if there are certain things that you don't understand, like for example, this 0.85, that means that you forgot what you watch or you didn't watch some video where I explained this, okay? So, but at the end of the day, we have two values, sigma a prime and sigma m prime, here or here. Yes, it doesn't matter. Once we get out of this slide, we have only two values, amplitude and mean. They come from wherever they come. All right, we condense this into two values. And then we use interaction criterion to calculate the safety factors. All right. So, okay, so Mod-Goodman is the one that we know, okay, because we talked about this a lot. And the equation is easy. Basically, you consume your endurance with the amplitude, some of it your endurance with the amplitude, hopefully not one. Then you consume the rest of the SUT with your average stress. And once you do that, then you have this 1 over eta F, you invert the number, and then you have this fatigue safety factor for infinite life. So you know whether you get infinite life or not. And in this chart, red, which is eta equal to 1, that means that you barely make it at infinite life. And if you are outside, you don't get infinite life. You get less than infinite life. Here it says like that. Yes? If this is less than 1, you don't get this. You get less. How much less? Next video. Okay? So, okay. And then if you are in this region, it becomes blue. And that means that you have eta greater than 1. That means that you are comfortable. If you're here, you have infinite life and room to grow because you have a safety factor there, I don't know, 1.5, something like that. Yes? Okay, so that's Small-Goodman, linear interaction, because the two stresses, these two are constants, yes? And these two are the variables. You can put this match or this match, and this match or that match, those are the variables. And so it's a linear equation because it's this plus this, yes? And okay, so it's linear interaction, a line. And so what happened with linear interaction is that sometimes a little bit too conservative. This is the same thing that happened with Tresca for yield, right? And we had to go to von Mises because Tresca was a little bit too conservative sometimes. So the same thing happens here, yes? And how you know the Mott-Goodman is too conservative? Well, you know only when you have experimental data, yes? So if you calculate it with Mott-Goodman, and everything was great, but then you do experiments of prototypes with a combined load and your experimental data falls somewhere here. Then you say, why my experimental data is here? It shouldn't be there. Yes, you get infinite life, that's 10 to the 6. 10 to the 6, you reach 10 to the 6 and you're right there and you got 10 to the 6. But Mott-Goodman said, no, you should get 10 to the 6 when you get here. And so then you say, oh man, I gotta do something so I don't spend so much money on material and weight, especially weight on material, if I don't have to. Okay, makes sense? So then we have other failure criteria. We have this picture, yes, with different interaction criterion. So we start with Soderberg, which really is not used very much because it's more conservative than Goodman. I don't know, maybe in some particular case, but you see, and for example, if you use Soderberg, which is like Mott-Goodman, but instead of SUT, you put SY here. That's the only difference. That's why I put it in red, yes, because here you see you have SUT, and here you see you have SY, yes, and since SY is less than SUT, you have less to consume. You consume this and you consume this faster. And so you can, with Soderberg, all right, your critical eta equal to 1 is right there at B. But with Goodman, Mott-Goodman is here, okay? So if Soderberg says, here you have eta equal to 1, Mott-Goodman says what? No, you have eta equal to, I don't know, 1.2, yes? So Soderberg is more conservative than Mott-Goodman, yes? Okay, so that's the end of it. That's what it is. So then, like I mentioned, some experimental data is out there that shows structures, components reaching 10 to the 6 life, a million cycles, and on this side of the Mott-Goodman, when Mott-Goodman says it shouldn't, all right? So if they're on this side, well, there gotta be some other criterion. And since these things is empirical, you basically do whatever you want, but people have done it already and they have names. So Gerber's is an equation, okay, complicated. Yes, I don't expect you to memorize it. And so you should check always because I may have typos. So check against the book because you know I have to type it in the notes and type it in the PowerPoint and type it so many times that you know I may have errors. But I don't think so, but who knows? So it's an equation in terms of SUT and SE. Those are the variables, same variables, but it has this shape which follows this curve and goes from SUT to SE, but it's more curvy. All right, so it's less conservative than Mott-Goodman. And if you match your experimental data, then so be it. That's what you use. And all right, so then we have a ASME elliptic. ASME elliptic is like Gerber in the sense that it's on this side of Goodman, on the right. So your experimental data is somewhere out here, yes. Then you use semi-elliptical. Semi-elliptical is not so permissive as Gerber in this region where you are, you have high mean values, very high mean values. Semi-elliptical doesn't let you go beyond S sub y. Okay, so for semi-elliptical, which is this area is forbidden. Yes, or eta is less than 1. The equation is simple because it looks like Soderberg's equation but with squares. And so you got this SE and this S sub y, and you square them both to give it this curvy shape. And then there is a square root and inverse. The inverse is to get the eta directly. So then you got this equation. And it has better agreement with some data. Okay. And so finally, this is a criterion for yield, not fatigue criterion. It's a criterion for yield. So Langer criterion basically is this equation. Okay, but graphically it's not on the plot because it gets out of the plot. So basically you go from S sub y, because S sub y is the parameter for yield, right? You know S sub y. So if you have a mean stress with no alternating component, that would be quasi-static. Langer says don't exceed this value. Yeah, this is what we did up to chapter 5 when we didn't have fatigue. Okay, quasi-static, we don't let anything go, any stress go beyond S sub y. But then Langer says also if you have no mean value, you have only alternating, which will be this axis, right? Only you have alternating with zero mean. Then don't let it go beyond S sub y. So, okay, I'm going to try to do this and put here a point to extend this axis, call this point S sub y. And then, this is not easy. Then try to draw a line to go there. Yes? It didn't come out so good. All right? So that's what Langer says. The sum of the two stress, mean and amplitude, cannot exceed S sub y, because this plus this is this, which goes there. It cannot exceed this, otherwise it will be less than 1, correct? And the reason Langer is conservative, in my opinion, is because these two have been affected for fatigue, no safety, sorry, this is a typo, stress concentration factors. Yes, K sub F. Even though yield will occur at n equal to 1, because either you go this way and it yields, or you go this way with this sinusoid and in n equal to 1, boom, you got here, so it will occur there. And so the fatigue doesn't have time to act. But the primes mean that they have been increased by this value, yes? And that, I think it makes it conservative, all right? And so, okay, so one could use this or we could use something else, and that depends on experience for the particular material and application and processing conditions, all right? So, okay, so then we have a little summary. So we have different fatigue criteria now, which will result in different value of safety factor, all right? And so our only experience with particular material, processing condition, and application can tell which one to use, all right? And sometimes the code or the regulations or the practice within the company you work with say that we have to use one criterion versus the other. And that's just saying that people have experience and they say, no, we're going to use this because for our industry, that's what it works. All right. So Moll-Gutmann remains the winner for quick calculation because it's linear, it's easy, it's conservative. So we like it. Okay. All right. So that's all for today. As usual, videos are here or here, and homework is there. And thank you very much for your attention. All right.